Hello everyone, this is Tuesday, July 8th, 2014. I'm Roxanne Grinage. I'm the Legal Administrative Assistant, Case Study Referral, Careers Project Manager, owner of Higher Lyrics Administrative Services, who has demonstrated for the past 2 to 3 years now an administrative solutions tool we call the U.S. Citizens Control Public Docket Database that enables identification of individual accountability for various felony crimes perpetrated by way of official corruption, fraud, and civil rights violations. It's been a while since I've come to you in videos. I like to call my videos teaching segments where I share what I've learned as I'm learning it as I go along. Okay, so this is long overdue and it's really important. It's the Arkansas RICO case that is forging the way, trailblazing the way for many federal crime victims to find our way into RICO actions that by filing a civil lawsuit. How we can get criminal referrals to the U.S. Attorney General or the District Attorney General for criminal penalties that apply for the fraud of interstate commerce by business enterprises if we satisfy certain statements available by certain statements required by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and recognize the difference between jurisdiction of the U.S. District Court, what they can give us, a jury trial, injunctive relief, and so on, and recognize the jurisdiction of the prosecutors, what they can give us is to accept our statements of law, our memorandum statements of law, our statements of facts, and our grand jury indictment, proposed grand jury indictments, our statements of probable cause, for why these certain identified individuals heading up these huge, massive business enterprises defrauding interstate commerce by way of widespread legitimized kidnap for profit schemes and theft of property and person should in fact be criminally charged, indicted, and prosecuted, all right, according to criminal rules of procedure. And thirdly, we have the learning now to, at the same time, while you're pulling this information together to satisfy the RICO statement. How many people have tried to file a RICO? And I got this from a gentleman a couple weeks ago. Well, I talked to an attorney told me if I file a RICO, it's just going to be thrown out. You know, there are requirements for RICO. Okay, there are requirements for everything. When you approach a certain entity or a certain person or people that have a role, they immediately divert to their position descriptions. I know I'm one of those people who got a letter from the U.S. Attorney in my district who said, Roxanne, the reason why your evidence was not acted upon that you delivered here is only because we can only accept referrals by existing law enforcement agencies or existing courts. So that gave us, Higher Lyrics Administrative Solutions, the challenge. We have a slogan that said there is a solution to every market entry challenge. We're trying to get into the market of not just litigation now for commercial enterprises, commercial litigation or complex litigation. We're trying to get into the criminal justice market. We are trying to invoke our qualified, no-nonsense prosecutors. The biggest inspiration that we have for that is the Kids for Cash convictions out in Scranton. Okay, so we are working on taking this start. I happen to live in Philadelphia, but my internet company, Higher Lyrics Administrative Services, receives clients from anywhere in the United States of America that is under the union of the states, the federal laws. Okay, And so we don't try to practice law outside the country. We don't practice law at all. I work as a legal secretary and do the research, find out what's required to be court compliant. If there is another venue besides court, like the U.S. Attorney's Form 95, put in a claim to the insurance company for damages caused by an employee of a federally funded agency and so on. So what I learned here is the perfect opportunity in pulling together. Let me show you this first. I'm going to read this to you slowly so you can find it on Google. U.S. Attorneys, USAM, Title IX, Criminal Resource Manual, 2077. There are actually 3 of these that we're going to do. This is the RICO Prosecution Memorandum, the Statement of Law. This section should state the legal elements of proof for each of the crimes alleged, and the relevant, particularly from the appropriate circuit, governing those elements. Even though the reviewer has undoubtedly seen these elements in cases many times before, the law section serves the important role of establishing writer is knowledgeable about his or her burden and has prepared the memorandum accordingly. So there are pieces in here. So as we go through item A through H to satisfy the statement of law for our RICO statement, I was about to say, how many of us have went on and filed a RICO, but we didn't have a RICO statement, or we didn't have a compliant RICO statement, okay? So this is the guideline for how you have to comply, not to the U.S. District Court, but to the U.S. Attorney. And yes, you do put it in your complaint. Now, it also says there's a part under seal, which for the proposal of indictment for the grand jury that the U.S. Attorney may appoint, okay? So that's where you have the challenge of finding out in your state court, in your district court, your federal court for your district, how to enter certain parts under seal, but it still goes in with the complaint, all right? And the complaint gets mailed, everything with all of its exhibits gets mailed to, guess what? If there's really fraud of interstate commerce, it goes to the Recovery Act fraud and the Transparency Board, Accountability and Transparency Board for the Recovery Act. Honorable Kathleen S. Teague, Chair, Recovery Accountability. So here's my cover page. Now, it's not the plaintiffs in Arkansas sending this in. It now becomes the secretary, the person, became an expert at reviewing not only their documents, but reviewing all of the, that's going to be the title of this video, how to gather evidence and exhibits for to satisfy RICO statements from the home pages of your commercial enterprise defendants, okay? I'm the one who went and researched the home pages of Arkansas DHS and Arkansas Judiciary Administrative Courts to get the proof of the fraud in their very own reports. What's the first thing we have to prove? We have to prove the precise formulation of the RICO enterprise. All of them have their org charts there. Arkansas DHS has their history there and what law was passed and brought them in to allow them to be there. The relevant case law of the circuit which supports the formulation of the enterprise. That's item B. Item B. What is the relevant case law in that circuit that let that entity exist as a business enterprise making these transactions? And don't forget, administration of courts transact business, okay? Arkansas DHS, Departments of Health and Human Services, transact huge business, and both of them transact interstate commerce and adversely impacted. So when we get these documents, this cover page goes in on my letterhead with my business credentials, my microfilm, my entity numbers, my registrations here in Pennsylvania, my federal tax ID number, all on the left-hand side. Because I'm saying that I have an evidentiary fraud report, request for investigation, audits, whistleblower protections. There are whistleblower protections in the Recovery Act, fraud and waste laws, civil and criminal penalties for public safety and U.S. economy espionage, emergency posed by Arkansas Department of Human Services and Arkansas Court Administration's adverse impacts on interstate commerce, health, and safety of America's working class student and impoverished citizens, residents, and aliens by systematic functioning as a racketeering influence corrupt organization. In order for us to move forward the reform of a perverted judicial system that flagrantly and deliberately practices legal malpractice of child welfare laws, and its employees are allowed to literally premeditate embezzling Title V federal funding and stealing the assets of America's foster children so that they become homeless, uneducated, drug-addicted adults in the street. In order to really impact this, you are always going to have to speak in a voice of similarly situated. That's hard to do because people have a block to understanding that I don't want to do a class action. I want my situation. I want my kids returned right now, and you don't have to do that. You can do where we had success in Minnesota, and how we're coming here, and how we did in Philadelphia. You say who the family members are, the plaintiffs, but then you also say, and on behalf of similarly situated in that state who may not be able to sue, or in the country, because people have moved from that state because of the pro-slavery conduct that's down there. So many people are up here in Philadelphia that have horror stories about living in Arkansas. All right, now, and vice versa, Georgia, Mississippi, they're coming through. In your addressing the chairman of the board, Honorable Kathleen S.T., who was appointed by President Obama to chair the Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board, she will continue serving as the Inspector General of the Department of Education. Learn everyone's capacities. Learn what their position description is. Learn who you need to be talking to or showing them this information. No, you can't make anybody do anything. But the people that take their job seriously, and here I got the little PDFs from the official website of the Recovery Act, Fraud and Waste Report. They're all PDFs and they're active links of the board members of the Transparency and Accountability Board's testimony before U.S. Congress. So you can see there are more good people than bad people. There are more qualified people who took their oaths to uphold the Constitution and their mandate to manage federal funding seriously, to the point where they don't have to come and pat you on the back and say, thanks, good show, you gave us what we need. Let them take the pieces that apply to their role and move on it as their agendas line up with your agenda to clean up corruption in your town and recover sold and resold for profit loved ones who you don't know the whereabouts of, health, safety of, or whether or not they're alive or dead. Okay? And what you do know about them breaks your heart.